And he was willing to go whatever I could do to make that film. So that's how it all started, with him coming off of...
Martin Scorsese has turned gangsters and criminals into cinematic legends, shaping classics like Goodfellas, The Departed, and Taxi Driver. But behind that brilliance lies a secret list of 7 actors he despises, so deeply that he walked out of rooms and vowed never to work with them again. They mocked his method, challenged his authority, and one nearly swung at him during rehearsal. And the real shock? These weren't minor names. They were A-list stars. And once you hear what happened, you'll understand why the tension was explosive. Jim Carrey, the actor who made Scorsese walk out of his own workshop. Jim Carrey isn't the first name people associate with Martin Scorsese, but he is the one who pushed Scorsese's patience to the edge of collapse. Their brief encounter in 1999, during early development of Scorsese's original Howard Hughes project, is remembered in insider circles as the moment when the room changed temperature. Carrey arrived at the workshop with the explosive energy he was famous for, but Scorsese's world is built on precision, rhythm, timing, silence, and Carrey didn't believe in silence. Within minutes, he was standing on a chair, twisting his body to mimic Hughes's physical deterioration, then suddenly dropping to the floor and crawling under Scorsese's desk to demonstrate the paranoia phase. The room froze. Scorsese's jaw tightened. His fingers tapped the table in a fast, irritated beat. Dante Ferretti later recalled, Jim was performing for himself. Martin wasn't watching a character. He was watching chaos. This was completely against Scorsese's principles, and Jim was disrespecting it as well as himself. The breaking point came when Carrey improvised 5 different versions of a monologue, changing the tone every time. Scorsese finally leaned back, eyes cold, and said quietly, "Stick to the script, Jim." Carrey smiled and replied, "But that's not how genius works." That was it. Scorsese stood up, walked out, and didn't return for 15 minutes. The message was unmistakable. Carrey's creativity was not brilliance to Scorsese, it was insubordination. Behind closed doors, Scorsese told his producer, "If I let him loose in my film, I'll lose control of the film." The project was reworked. Carrey was erased from every document. Scorsese never spoke of him publicly again. Julia Roberts, the superstar. Scorsese refused to direct. Second on this list, and easily the most famous name Martin Scorsese ever turned his back on, is Julia Roberts. And do you know the shocking part? Their fallout didn't happen on set, or during a fight over lines. It started the moment Julia walked into a fitting room and laughed. They were preparing for the Age of Innocence. The costume team had spent days arranging authentic 1870s corsetry, stiff, brutally tight, exactly the kind Scorsese believed forced actors into the physical world of their characters. Julia picked one up, ran her fingers along the boning, and smirked. "So this is what you want me to suffer in?" she joked, loud enough for the entire room. No one laughed. Scorsese stared at her hands pulling at the corset strings, almost casually, like she was inspecting a Halloween costume. When the tailor began tightening it, Julia winced and yanked it loose again. "This isn't acting. This is torture," she muttered. That was the first crack. Scorsese stepped closer, calm but visibly irritated. His voice dropped. Actors of that era lived inside this discomfort. Julia shrugged, not backing down. "Well, I'm not spending months gasping for air just to walk across a room." From there, the tension snowballed. During a rehearsal, Julia stopped mid-scene, shook her head, and said, "People don't talk like this. Nobody talks like this." She turned to Scorsese as if challenging him to disagree. And he did. His face tightened, and he answered without raising his voice, "They did. You just don't want to." That line changed everything. Minutes later, Julia's team pulled her aside. Within days, she stepped away from the film, quietly, without public explanation. But insiders remember Scorsese's reaction afterward. He closed her file, placed it at the bottom of the stack, and told a colleague almost under his breath, "She's not coming back. Not for anything I make." To this day, Julia Roberts remains the biggest star Scorsese ever rejected before the camera even rolled. Mark Wahlberg, the loudest clash Scorsese ever had on set. What happens when Mark Wahlberg's temper crashes head-on into Martin Scorsese's obsession with control? You get one of the ugliest behind-the-scenes blow-ups in The Departed. The drama didn't take months to build. It exploded on day 3. They were shooting one of Dignam's legendary insult-filled scenes. Scorsese approached Wahlberg quietly after a take and tried to adjust the tone. Mark wiped sweat off his forehead, looked him dead in the eye, and fired the first shot. "Stop policing my performance. You hired me to be real. Let me be real." This wasn't just pushback. It was Wahlberg accusing Scorsese of ruining the very thing he was hired to deliver. Scorsese froze because the line implied that Scorsese didn't understand authenticity, a direct insult to a director famous for living inside his characters' worlds. That sentence alone shifted their dynamic from professional to combative. Scorsese stared at him for a long second before delivering a line that ended any hope of peace between them. "Real doesn't mean uncontrollable. If you can't adjust, you don't belong in my films." The message beneath the words was brutal. Wahlberg is talented, but not disciplined enough for Scorsese's world. After that, Mark's face dropped, and from that point on, he played every scene like he was proving something. Not to the audience, but to Scorsese himself. For Scorsese, this was the equivalent of slamming a door. He wasn't correcting Wahlberg. He was rejecting him. After that exchange, their relationship was done. They stopped speaking on set unless absolutely necessary. Scorsese didn't even mention him in private celebrations. And when his name came up years later for Shutter Island or Wolf of Wall Street, Scorsese reportedly shook his head and said only, "He's not coming back." Winona Ryder, the soft voice that hit Scorsese harder than a scream. Winona Ryder is 4th on this list, and the strange thing about her feud with Martin Scorsese is this: it didn't erupt. It sliced. She never raised her voice, never slammed a door, but the tension between them on The Age of Innocence grew into one of Scorsese's most uncomfortable on-set relationships. The fallout happened during a quiet evening shoot inside the Van der Luyden mansion set. The room was lit, the crew was waiting, and Scorsese had stopped the camera again. He wanted Winona to show a flicker of emotional strategy, something subtle and sharp in May Welland. So he stepped to her side and said carefully, "May isn't as innocent as she looks. Let the audience feel her choice." Winona held her script against her chest, nodded slowly, then answered with a line that stunned everyone within earshot. "I won't turn her into a villain because you want more edge." This wasn't a refusal. It was a declaration. She was telling Scorsese that his interpretation of May was wrong. For a director who builds every frame around emotional precision, it hit like a challenge to his identity. Scorsese tried once more, this time firmer. "Her strength is hidden. Don't play her like a child." Winona's reply was even sharper. "Her strength is dignity, not calculation. I'm not changing that." That sentence broke whatever was left of their collaboration. At that time, Scorsese stepped back, folded his arms, and didn't speak another word to her until cameras rolled. He didn't yell, but his silence was harsher than a fight. From that day on, their communication became cold, transactional, barely professional. Winona still delivered a performance that earned an Oscar nomination, but after filming wrapped, Scorsese never mentioned her name again, never invited her to another project, never opened the door for a second chance. And it stayed that way for decades. James Caan, the meeting that destroyed the film. James Caan is the 5th name on this list, and ironically the only actor who clashed with Martin Scorsese before the camera ever rolled. Their feud came from pure personality, they colliding in a tiny pre-production office in the mid-1970s. It happened during early discussions for a Little Italy character study Scorsese wanted to make. Khan arrived confident, riding the heat of The Godfather, talking fast, pacing the room, flipping through the script like it was a magazine. Scorsese sat opposite him, quietly watching, already irritated by the swagger. The tension boiled over when Khan tossed the script onto the table and said, "Nobody from New York talks like this. Let me fix it so it sounds like a real man." It wasn't just a critique. It was Khan telling Scorsese, who grew up in those exact streets, that he didn't understand his own world. Later, Scorsese's expression went completely blank. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and answered with a line that cut through the room. "I don't need you to rewrite my city. I need you to play it." That second sentence ended all hope of collaboration. Khan's line questioned Scorsese's authenticity. Scorsese's reply questioned Khan's professionalism. After that, there was no point continuing. The meeting derailed in minutes. By the end of the week, the entire project collapsed. Not paused, collapsed. And insiders said both men stopped returning each other's calls. For the next 30 years, they kept a polite distance. Both had the same unspoken agreement. One room wasn't big enough for both of them. So after hearing these stories, which actor shocked you the most, and who do you think deserved a second chance? Tell me in the comments below. And if you want more untold Hollywood stories just like this, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. The next video might surprise you even more.